In early spring, a medieval Buddhist festival is celebrated in the Himalayan kingdom of Mustang. It is called Tiji. The three-day ritual is a prayer for peace, rooted in Tibetan Buddhism.
You can see the similarity between the people of Mustang and the people of Tibet. The way we pray and dress, in our language and in our way of life.
But true Tibetan culture is on the verge of extinction inside Tibet. And until recently, it was disappearing in Mustang, one of the last places on Earth where it still exists.
The culture of Mustang is in decline, and our people are poor and mostly illiterate.
Even Tiji, the most important festival of the year, was practiced by just a handful of monks.
Our monasteries were in a dilapidated state. People stopped going to them and became quite indifferent to their religious faith.
The monasteries are very, very important to carry the spirit of the tradition.
The monasteries, central to Buddhist life, were crumbling. Centuries-old traditions were fading. Mustang is a rarity, a time capsule of Tibetan culture. In this remote and isolated land, the ancient ways live on.
And imagine there was no electricity, there was no means of communications, there was no means of transportation. We were literally in the Middle Age.
The kingdom of Mustang sits on a high desert plateau between northwestern Nepal and Tibet. Politically, it is a part of Nepal, but culturally and geographically.
In the 14th century, King Amepal declared Mustang an independent state and made Lomantang its capital. So my father is the 25th king in this lineage.
The kingdom grew prosperous from the busy trade that moved salt, wool, grain, and spices between India and Tibet.
So you had merchants from south and north coming together there. And just as Venice was, at about the same time, the merchants there became wealthy and they built monasteries.
The monasteries, called gompas, are the center of Buddhist practice. They're filled with sculptures and vibrant paintings of deities and mandalas.
Buddhism is not a religion to be practiced only by monks. It teaches everyone to live harmoniously through the cultivation of love and compassion.
The Buddhist tradition can bring long run more inner peace. Through that way, we human beings become more fuller.
That era in the history of Mustang.
Beginning in the 18th century, Mustang's fortunes began a slow decline. War with neighboring kingdoms weakened its lucrative position as a trading and cultural. Mustang, virtually cut off from the rest of the world, became known as the Forbidden Kingdom.
Mustang lost its trading ties with Tibet.
The monasteries and their holy paintings within gradually succumbed to neglect, age, and the harsh climate of the Himalayas.
I remember as a child, the monasteries were in very bad shape. And there were holes in the roof, so pigeons nested inside.
The paintings of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, considered living deities by the people, were imprisoned behind layers of grime.
Because of all the damages, they were defiled.
So once those big monastic institutions destroyed, then automatically Buddhist tradition much sort of damage or much sort of decline.
This really made me sad, and to see the conditions of the monasteries. I thought I need to do something for this community.
Nepal opened Mustang's southern border in 1991. The outside world was now able to enter this forbidden kingdom. The first official visitor was Richard Blum, founder of the American Himalayan Foundation.
Here was this pure example of Tibetan culture and art essentially untouched.
In 1991, the American Himalayan Foundation was already a decade old and was building and supporting schools, hospitals, and sacred sites in the Himalayas. But the kingdom of Mustang had been off limits.
I told Richard, Thupchen Monastery was built centuries ago, but now it's run down and falling apart. For Mustang to come alive again, we must restore the monasteries.
It was actually pretty challenging for us to
It's about my presence. I immediately
The best way, effective way to keep one's own tradition is, I have the view, through modern education. Remain isolated is not necessarily a good way to preserve their tradition.
Outside Charang is Samduk Chorten. Chortens, also called stupas, are Buddhist shrines which often contain the relics or ashes of a High Lama. This 500-year-old Chorten is one of the largest in Mustang.
Do you remember how was this Chorten before?
Oh, you've done a great job here, you know, it looks amazing.
We spent 2 summers removing all this coating of paintings.
Some murals were so damaged they were hanging off the wall like curtains.
And that was scary. It was difficult even to breathe because any vibration could have caused the painting to come off the wall.
A thick layer of dirt and grease coated everything.
The butter lamps had deposited plenty of smoke. Can you just imagine 6 centuries of smoke? Can you imagine holding a cotton swab with a chemical that could have destroyed a 15th century masterpiece?
When the dirt melted away, brilliant colors, hidden for generations, were revealed.
For having created such great works of art.
The king came in and he complimented with us, "Oh, you're such a great artist." And it took them a while to realize, and us to explain them, that that was the original painting and we had just removed what was on top.
Next came the slow process of retouching the damaged murals.
The original painters used the most expensive, beautiful colors. We find cinnabar that is red. We find orpiment that is yellow. We find lapis lazuli that in Tibetan history up to now is the first example.
As the monasteries once again became active places for prayer, the tiny monastic school at Chodde Gompa started to grow.
A very positive effect on everything else that has happened in the area.
We've noticed an enormous number of new monastic communities that are developing. It was a bit shocking in the early days.
The restoration of the monasteries is now in its final phase. Luigi will return as a mentor, but it will become the job of the local people to maintain these ancient masterpieces.
Yeah, 2 times. Yes.
In Lomantang, we have now over 60 men and women who are trained in the field of restoration. But these people can carry on the job.
Some of the locals have been such good students that they've now become teachers.
I think this is the best achievement ever out of this project.
Could not have been imagined a decade ago. It's revived interest in a traditional way of life and instilled a sense of its value to the younger generation. The kingdom of Mustang is reawakening.
There's a lot of people saying, well, I can't stay back for practical reasons, but more importantly, I'm also staying back to preserve my own culture. This work has not only brought back life into the community, but it really has brought about change in the entire region.
Dick Blum is like a brother to me. He helped Mustang and touched our hearts. His contribution means a lot to my people and to me personally.
This year, the annual Tiji Festival is being celebrated on a scale not seen in years. During the ritual, masked dancers reenact the battle between good and evil. When evil, in the form of demons, is driven from the land, there'll be enough water for the crops to grow. In essence, Tiji is a prayer for peace and stability.
Peace, not just for ourselves, but for the entire world.
With motivation from the inside and support from the outside, Mustang survives. A microcosm of Tibetan Buddhist culture. Its traditions, the hopes and aspirations of the people have been rejuvenated, like the fields of Mustang, nourished by the spring rains and celebrated by Tiji.